Good morning from Sandwich Notch.
They started working on this road in 1803, and it had 30 to 40 families living along it in the early 1800s. Farmers and traders would transport their goods primarily in the winter because the packed snow offered the smoothest road surface. There is now only one house remaining along the road, and the land has been preserved as part of the White Mountain National Forest. Sandwich Notch Road is unusual in that it goes through two separate notches, or gaps, or passes, depending on where you're from. It also traverses three separate watersheds. The road is pretty smooth right now, but I have seen photos from a few years ago where it would have been helpful to have a high-clearance vehicle to make it through. There's even a little bit of pavement to control erosion on this downhill here. These bridges cross the Bear Camp River, and we are very close to a waterfall just off the road that I completely missed. Don't forget to share the road. The silly road signs in front of the Jonathan Bede Bed and Breakfast made me turn around to get video. I managed to tip over while the rear tire spun in some loose gravel. It was the first tip over for this bike, and it wasn't as difficult to pick up as I was fearing. The juxtaposition of these signs and a fancy B&B is amusing, but Halloween's almost a month away. Hey look, a Jolly Roger. The Durgeon-covered bridge was built in 1869, but the first bridge here was completed in 1828. This road really feels like riding with the forest instead of through it. The tall, arrow-straight trees come right up to the edge of the road, and there is no ditch separating the woods from the path. I am on Route 302 headed toward Crawford Notch. The dirt section a few miles back along Bear Notch was a lot smoother than I expected for a section with an easier bypass. I didn't manage to turn the camera on, and then I met a huge parade of cars crawling the other way. The route passes by the Mount Washington Hotel, which was completed in 1902 and definitely has a bit of a shining vibe. This is Jefferson Notch Road, which holds the claim of the highest elevation for a public highway in New Hampshire. At 3,009 feet, it is less than half as high as the Mount Washington Auto Road, which was closed to motorcycles today because of rain and fog. I have a poor 1-in-3 record of the Auto Road being open when I visit. As you ascend, there are occasional glimpses of the raging Jefferson Brook off to the left side of the road. The surface of the road was a little slick in some parts. I had a quick lunch with this guy in Gorham and then headed for Maine. This road follows alongside the Wild River in Maine. I had not spent much time in this part of Maine before, and I don't know if it is because it is not as familiar as Vermont and New Hampshire, but it suddenly felt much more remote. This is all still within the White Mountain National Forest. The forest here feels like it goes on forever, and not in a bad way. If you opt out of the ATV trails, the route takes you past the 5 Khazar ponds on the way to North Waterford. After stopping for a snack, I continued along Dresser School Road, which is lined with old stone walls. This is Dunn Road on Section 7. It always feels like it goes so much higher than you actually do, doesn't it? Here's the turn that I should be taking, but I do know that I am not the first to keep riding along this power line trail. It's rocky, and it reminds me a bit of the power line trails that I rode up in Ontario for the roaming rally. It's at this point that I realize that I'm not on the track anymore. I checked to see if this will reconnect with the route, but this trail isn't on the GPS.
I seem to have made a wrong turn.
Looking now at aerial photos, the power line makes a turn up ahead and then goes parallel to the route. Here's my turn. It certainly isn't as well traveled as the power line trail. But it's just as rocky. Sure, let's drag the 360 camera through the bushes. This trail feels every bit as exciting as some of the Class 4 sections in Vermont, but there isn't a bypass in the route. It makes me wonder how difficult the hard sections are in Maine. The route doubles back on Patch Mountain Road. In the early 1800s, there was a small settlement up ahead with a schoolhouse and 13 families. A mill was built further north, which is now the town of Greenwood. This is a really fun section with lots of exposed rock. And more than a few puddles.
Cemetery.
This is all that's left of the settlement on Patch Mountain.
For all those ATV guys who lost their lives 150 years ago.
Twitchell Pond is another beautiful Maine pond. I took a small detour here to ride on the causeway between the ponds. It has been such a beautiful autumn day. Others were out enjoying the beautiful weather too. Webb Lake is off to the right, and Jackson Mountain and Blueberry Mountain are ahead. This last stretch of Section 7 feels really remote. It seemed like I was the only one there. As the sun gets lower, I keep pushing toward Rangeley. I had heard that the lake and campground were really nice there. Only 15 more miles till camp. I stopped for a quick look over Mooselook-Maguntic Lake, and definitely had to look up the pronunciation of that one. I finally arrived at Rangeley Lake and set up camp. The campsites were a little bit close together, but had good privacy. There was a path down to the lake where the cedar tree stretched out over the water. I made some mac and cheese and watched the sun go down behind the mountains. As I lay in my hammock, I listened to the loons calling to each other in the dark. I rode 282 miles today and covered the second half of Section 6 and all of Section 7. If you're still watching, thanks for coming along.